Usage statistics are undeniably a really useful tool to have. They let you see exactly what is being used in high-level tournament play. However, within these usage statistics lies another statistic, win rate. I believe this statistic is the victim of gross misuse by the community at large, and in this video I will attempt to demonstrate why. A lot of people will make an argument about a Pokemon one way or another, and then cite that Pokemon's win rate, as if that proves their point. This Pokemon is good because win rate. This Pokemon is bad because win rate. This Pokemon is broken or not broken because win rate. And this argument makes me want to rip my hair out. And a lot of people will say, well, what better way to make an argument than with statistics? They're objective. That's very true. Statistics do not lie. Another thing statistics do is not tell the entire story of what it is they're depicting. And this is especially true in a game like Pokemon. There are so many factors that go into a Pokemon's win rate that have to be taken into consideration. You cannot take them as the end-all be-all, and yet many people do. In this video, we are going to be examining just how many factors go into win rate and why I think it's such a ludicrous way to support anything. So, the first and most obvious by far is that Pokemon is a team game. Okay, before I get into this, I first want to say I don't think win rate is a useless statistic. I think win rate can be interesting to look into, and we'll come back to this later on, but I don't think that it's the end-all be-all, and too many people are using it as such. So I want to make a call for nuance when looking into these things. You can't just say, oh, well, the win rate. Anyway, so the first thing, the very obvious point, is that we're looking at individual win rates of Pokemon when they are one of 6 members of a team. This in and of itself makes me think, how can you possibly look at this? Now, if you're going to say, well, how would you use win rate? I would say, okay, look, if, let's say, that Flygon win rate, that's pretty high, right? Well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to look at the games Flygon's been seeing use in, and I'm going to see what it is that makes Flygon win so much. And before we get into that, then I also want to mention the other incredibly important factors. First of all, the other things that go into determining a win or a loss in Pokemon, and thus affecting a certain Pokemon's win rate, this is a best of one tournament. The Smogon Premier League statistics are best of one. This is a best of one tournament in every match beyond RBY. It's best of one, and so much, anyone who's played in any sort of tournament knows that how much one game can be swung by even a couple turns of seemingly small RNG, and then you just don't even take that into account and you say, oh, but the win rate. You know, what if T-Tar was getting crit by Thunderbolts every single game, and then its win rate would be bad? Would that be Tyranitar's fault? I mean, I'm sure you could make some sort of intelligent reading into that. You could say, oh, well, you know, Tyranitar's being forced to absorb a lot of Thunderbolts, and, you know, this puts it at greater risk of, you know, getting unlucky, or becoming full parrot or crit or something like that. That would be worthwhile, but you would not say T-Tar not good because bad win rate. And that is exactly what is being said for a lot of Pokemon. Yeah, so there's the RNG factor, first of all, and I mean, you see it for all kinds of Pokemon. Offensive Pokemon miss their attacks, defensive Pokemon get crit more, RNG affects every single Pokemon's win rate, and that's, you know, yet another reason why I don't think of it as anything more than just, you know, something of, you know, passing interest. Oh, well, look into that. Claydol's been winning a lot in advance. I didn't even look at its win rate. Okay, Celebi's been winning a lot in advance. I'll look into why. You know, what is it about Celebi that makes it successful? I'm not going to look at the win rate and say, all right, well, that proves everything. So, yeah, there's the RNG factor, and then there's also the human factor. Maybe it would be a little more credible if people played perfectly, but as I'm sure anyone who's ever watched one of these tournaments tell you, people choke a lot. And not just like outright game-losing chokes, as in had the win and then threw it away. I'm talking just like little misplays, and in that case, then like even good players misplay. It's hard. I could take the single best player in this tournament, and I could point out several times where he misplayed. And that's not a knock against the single best player in this tournament, obviously, because I misplay all the time. Who doesn't? But I'm saying that the level of play is not perfect, and therefore, the determining who wins and loses a game is not just based on the strength of the Pokemon involved. There's RNG, and then there's the player factor. So, now, I'm not saying that win rate can't be indicative of certain trends in the metagame. So, I'll give an example. A couple of years ago, in Advance, then Aerodactyl had something like an 11% win rate in Advance. And I think the primary factor that contributed to that win rate was the fact that there was a lot of Protect in the metagame, and that made it hard for Aero to find its target. However, just because there was more Protect than usual did not make Aerodactyl a terrible Pokemon. People were looking at that win rate and saying, oh, what an awful Pokemon. It clearly can't win. People were saying, well, Aerodactyl has an 11% win rate, so I don't need to account for it with my team building anymore. And so people will act like, especially in older metagames, as if a single win rate in a single tournament, as if that suddenly upends the entire fabric of the metagame. Like, oh, well, I guess Aerodactyl's speed just isn't worth anything anymore because suddenly the entire metagame changed and it doesn't outrun everything and threaten offensive teams really hard. That kind of logic just boggles my mind. Yet it gets used a lot. Another example, people were calling Salamence, not long ago, people were calling Salamence bad in Advance, and now, a couple of years later, they're saying, oh, well, this is clearly a top 5 Pokemon in the metagame. And both times, I'm just thinking, look, I mean, Salamence is doing the same things as it's always done. Yeah, maybe it's a little more favorable for it right now because there's more fighting types and offensive teams struggle to switch into mixed defense and stuff like that. And, of course, metagame optimizations of certain Pokemon are going to swing certain Pokemon up and down and all around. But that doesn't mean that suddenly, let's say Aerodactyl is a bad tournament, well, it's clearly unviable now. And same that people were saying about Salamence. I think it's too much of a knee-jerk reaction to, first of all, trends, because trends come and go, but Aerodactyl is still very much OU, and Salamence is still as great a Pokemon as ever. So, it's trend. It's too current. It's like if you went into black and white and you suddenly said, I don't know, guys, I'm feeling there's a lot of steel types, so Latios probably isn't too good right now. And it's like, really? Yeah, Latios just stopped doing what it was that made it so great before, because steel types didn't exist before. And I just think this argument is very poor. Now, the Aerodactyl Protect thing, sure, that's definitely valid. You could say, oh, well, Aerodactyl's not winning a lot because there's a lot of Protect, it's struggling to finish off teams. There's a lot of really bulky teams, but that doesn't mean that suddenly Aerodactyl is unviable. Sure, Aerodactyl is still going to fit into teams just like it did before. And you can definitely pair Aerodactyl with other Pokemon. Let me put it this way. Looking at why a Pokemon is or isn't successful can be a really great tool for getting ahead of the metagame. Oh, people are using all these strategies to handle Aerodactyl, but that leaves them open to, let's say, Subcall Mine Suicune. Example I just made up. So if I can, pair these two together, then I can have Subcall Mine Suicune in the matchups Aerodactyl's bad against, and then I can have Aerodactyl who's good against pretty much everything else. That kind of thing is really, really helpful, as opposed to, well, this Pokemon's just bad. I think it's way too... what's the word? It's like temporary, but transient, that's the word. Yeah. So we're going to get into examples now. So, team game, RNG, small sample size. I didn't even mention that one. That's another reason why best of one is so hard to gauge too much from, other than like fleeting trends. Then small sample size, RNG, human factor is enormous. Just one of these factors would be enough to skew the win rate enough to not really take it seriously, or at least not take it as the end all be all, as if to not take it as it's proved some sort of point. But there's a lot of these factors going into it, not just one. So I'll give some DPP examples from this particular season, because there was a lot of really cool stuff that happened this season. I'm not saying there wasn't. But I also saw a lot of really, I guess people were being kind of Johnny-come-lately. I love that expression. And they were just saying, oh, well, Gengar's really good right now. Like, yeah, Gengar's really good right now, just like it's been really good for a while. I mean, it's not much has changed. I mean, look, there's no Dugtrio around to pursue it. Dugtrio was far from the only thing holding Gengar back. Gengar still has the same issues now as it did before. It had the same strengths as it did before. People just decided, hey, you know what? I'm going to use Gengar. And look at that. It's really good. So... And of course, there are explorations and moveset and whatnot, but so people were saying, oh, Gengar has this amazing win rate. So you know what I would do? I would look at why Gengar is winning. We're gonna actually do an example for one of these Pokemon. A lot of other people were saying at the beginning of the season, as Gengar was, oh my god, this is the best thing ever, then Clefable was, again, with small sample size, people were going, oh, well, Clefable's washed up. Clefable's past its prime. And I also appreciate that Gengar and Clefable are the first two examples because, they're shadows. And people are still, like, Clefable climbed up to the same win rate as Tyranitar. I realize they have a disparity in usage, but you get the idea. And people are saying, oh, well, Clef teams are over the hill. Clef, just can't hack it. And I watched the games with Clefable in it, and I'm like, are you not seeing what I'm seeing? Like, what's actually happening in the game? Like, freeze there, crit there, bad play there and there. And that goes... Another thing I don't see, Rotom Wash... I don't know how it works with all the other Rotom form. Okay, that's funny. Rotom Wash has a terrible win rate, but no one's saying, use Rotom Heat because it has a really good win rate. No one's saying use Scizor, it has a good win rate in 7 uses. It's small sample size, and there's too many factors, like the fact that it's not even the only Pokemon on its team. Again, I would be interested in looking, hey, Scisor's winning a lot. I wonder why. Let me look at the games where it is winning and see what exactly Scizor is doing that's making it win a lot. Is it contributing a lot to the games? Is it, consistently being useful? Is it plugging a certain defensive hole? Is it providing some sort of U-turn or pursuit support, or is it sweeping teams like game? How is it being used? How, in what forms is it successful? And why is it being successful? What other trends? But I would not say, oh well, Scizor has a good win rate, so it's good. I mean, yeah, I think that kind of thing is really myopic. Another example, actually we're going to go over a game which has Infernape. It has a low usage, 0% win rate. I won't deny that Infernape is lower than it's ever been in DPP. However, this if you went by the usage statistics, you would say, oh, well, just unviable. It's just, you can't use it anymore. And it's just not a good way of looking at it. Okay, so the example I've chosen is Starmie. And I picked out every single game that has Starmie in this SPL. We're going to go through them. We're not going to do a deep dive on analyzing each individual game. We're just going to look at how Starmie contributed to each game, to each team it was on. That's another really important factor, how a Pokemon enables a team to be built. There are a lot of great Pokemon that don't fit on a lot of teams. Azelf is a really good example. And we're going to look at how it contributed, how it, both in the battle and in the team building department, based on what you expected to do. And because what am I supposed to take away from this 50% win rate? Using Starmie as a coin flip? There's so many ways. Another reason, I didn't even mention this earlier, stats don't lie and all that, but yeah, that's true. Not, and they don't paint the entire picture, but also we have to interpret those stats. And we also have a tendency to misinterpret those stats. Just because, so, I could ask like 3 different people, what does Starmie's 50% win rate mean? And they would say, it's a good Pokemon that will reward you, and it would, you have to be smart and use it well. And I would agree with that, but not because of its win rate. Then another person would say, oh, it's pretty much a coin flip. It doesn't fit, not good. And a third person might say something in between. And, they may be right. That's just might be how they feel about Starmie in general. But using the win rate, I mean, what is this supposed to say? It has the same win rate has the same usage as Gengar and Empoleon, but a significantly lower win rate than either of those. So, is this supposed to, am I supposed to glean some sort of great significance from this? Gengar and Empoleon are winning a lot more, but, what's changed? So we are going to what we're going to do is we're going to take this usage statistic and we are going to examine the Pokemon in question, all the games it's been in, see how it contributed both in battle and to the teams it's on, and we are also going to take into account those other factors, RNG, both in the game and, based on how it was played. Those are very important. So, first game, August versus Christo. We're going to skip through a lot here because... Oh, great, my dimensions are fine. Because we're not analyzing this game. Look at that. Okay, so Jirachi goes down. Latias roars it in. Jirachi goes down. Starmie gets the spin off. That's already, great. I mean, the kinds of balanced teams that Christo's running here, you can pretty much expect things like Clefable, Magnezone, what's the thing? Gliscor, totally blanking. Jirachi, Latias, Suicune, Milotic instead of Suicune sometimes. Clefable, Gliscor, Breloom, Magnezone. Those are the kinds of balances that are really popular. That's actually pretty much... Oh, Scarf Flygon, that's it. Like on August's original team. Those kinds of balances are really popular. Starmie spins on those without much pressure and, finds its way in easily. It didn't even need to get roared in. It could switch in a bunch of places. And so it's already done its job in the game. And furthermore, it facilitates that team nicely. As long as August has good offensive synergy, which he does, then he will be able to break through defensive teams. And Starmie both eases pressure on his Blissey and enables him to use Zapdos. And it makes Breloom and Heatran more terrifying. So yeah, Starmie's already contributing a lot. So then there's the Chople HP Flying Clefable. That happened. So now... Suicune's getting going, Breloom's at low health, Zapdos is at, doesn't want to risk it, blows it up. Oh, there is the zone. Okay, cool. And now another KO. I don't know if this Heatran explosion was necessary, but he got the Swampert, almost dead, so that's helpful. And Latias stays asleep, and now we're going to enter a long stall war. Starmie comes in. Oh yeah, Starmie can sit on the Latias really freely, PP stall it because it has Toxic, so it can beat Blissey one-on-one, but no problem because Starmie can come in and stall it. So now Clefable, PS Calm on Clefable does not really beat Blissey one-on-one. So you could, and alternatively, you could also have, August could have gone back to Blissey on the Zapdos and then continued to stall it, because it doesn't have infinite PP. And matter of fact, he does stall the Clefable with Blissey later, so that Zapdos was sacrificed arguably needlessly. So there's the human factor. By the way, I'm going to be criticizing a lot of players in this, and I do not want to give the impression that I am immune to such mistakes. My Pokemon career is riddled with such mistakes. So I hope whoever I criticize does not take it personally, because everyone makes these kinds of mistakes, even the best players. And I am simply doing this to point out how win rate is such a terrible stat. And, yeah. So, nice double switch. Latias Spore didn't do anything, wasn't crazy about that, but it doesn't really matter. It's minor stuff, and now he's kind of in a weirder spot. He's got to be careful. But, you know, he can use Starmie here. He can use Starmie to sit on the Latias for sure. But he just, Breloom meets another HP flying and superpower. And now here's another thing. Starmie, nope, he just gets leftovers on the Starmie without even using Recover. See, look how cool Starmie can be. And now, I mean, obviously the HP flying Clefable makes it weird, but it also, you know, that just means it doesn't have Thunderbolt. And now... Oh, he got the freeze on Blissey earlier and forced it to switch out. And Starmie still absorbed the +6 HP flying. What a hero. So, I mean, this doesn't really prove anything in and of itself, its ability to, you know, stave off Starmie, other than when Clef gets 2 freezes on a Blissey, and he tries to recover stall, maybe should have attacked, actually he definitely should have attacked it on one of these last turns, but doesn't really matter. And, you know, now Og pretty much has this Clef beat because it's out of PP. Actually, how many soft boils does he have? Definitely could have been done more carefully, but, and again, you know, Starmie has nothing to do with that. Starmie already contributed a lot in the building and the early game performance department, so, I mean, he's got to be careful around this thing. And here... August has to win a prediction game around the Clef, which has 3 HP flyings left. He's going to keep spamming it. Soft-boiled. He's got 1 left after this. Soft-boiled. And Og goes to Breloom. And in case you're wondering why this is relevant to Starmie, how August plays this decides Starmie's win rate. Even though it's already contributed to the battle and the team in a really great way, this is going to be a factor on whether it wins or not. So then August goes for the superpower. He has a 75% chance to kill. He does not get the 75% chance plus crit to kill. And also, he could have gone back to Blissey and guaranteed the win right there. So, he won. He had it absolutely guaranteed if he did that. Whereas, you know, probably more guaranteed than 75% plus crit. I don't know. And then he's going to wind up losing the game, and that's that. And all because... And that's going to be a loss for Starmie. So... Hopefully now I could stop there, but we're going to be more brief with the remaining games, but I want to go over them. So, oh yeah, it was also funny about how early in the season, with a very small sample size, people were dumping on Clefable saying, oh, you know, it's 1-3 right now, it's 1-4, and this was the game where it won, where, you know, it probably should have lost. And then some of the other games, it was getting unlucky, and maybe it should have won, or maybe there were misplays, and that goes back to the whole point. Win rate isn't going to tell you a lot. You should look at the games themselves. So, yeah, that's that point made. Alright, Void versus Male. I made, no, I did not make Male's team. I built with him a lot, and we used a lot of Spec Starmie this season because I think it's awesome. I even posted about it on the forums. So it switches out. Yep, so that's already good. You know, the Flygon's not scarfed. Stuff happens, and now Starmie comes in and threatens Kingdra. That's just a good choice on his team, and still threatening. It's because it's fast. Look what Starmie does. It outruns and threatens pretty much the entire, you know, 5 members of offensive teams, and threatens them really hard. It's crazy. And with the Napoleon to eat up the Kingdra, then, you know, everything's fine. Cool. Stuff happens, Infernape sacks, so Gliscor doesn't get Ice Punch. Another Hydro Pump, Kingdra getting worn down. You know, late game, this Starmie's gonna be devastating. Lucario, Gliscor, stuff happens. And Gliscor gonna... So now Metagross comes in, and Male arguably, or actually I think definitely should have switched to Starmie and sacrificed it because it was obvious Scarf, and there's, you know, no set in which case... No realistic set in which case it's going to win here. And then Gliscor guarantees it beats Lucario in the last slot, but it's still fine because he just has to hit a Hydro Pump. And instead, he's going to... He could either get crit by E-Speed or dodge a Hydro Pump. Not great odds, but I mean, there are odds. And thus, that's the game. So that's another loss for Starmie. And thus, its win rate isn't looking so good so far. And would you say it's because Starmie is a bad Pokemon. Oh, you say, oh, small sample size, but this is exactly what is being said. And so if the win rate isn't supposed to tell me anything, then, you know, I know I'm getting a little agitated because I'm having arguments with people I've had arguments in the past in my head right now, but you get my frustration. And it did not have another move to... If it had Psychic, then that game was over barring a crit, but it was Thunderbolt on that team, sadly. Alright, another one. Emerald versus Malekith. Yeah, Breloom, stuff happens. We're just looking for the Starmie. Oh, look! Emerald's running a balanced team. Starmie comes in and spreads some para. I mean, Clef is there, but that doesn't mean that Starmie can't be useful. It's going to get that spin-off. Now, obviously, in terms of the team building... Oh, yeah, in the team department, then Starmie was a perfect fit on that team of that Male brought. And it's a great fit here on this kind of balance thing, too, especially because he has Empoleon and Breloom and T-Tar and Gliscor to put the pressure on the defensive teams that Starmie is not so great against. And against more offensive stuff, then Starmie does a lot. So, and look at how much work it's putting in here. And stuff happens, Starmie rocks, pressure. Custap T-Tar's awesome. So, and if you're wondering, oh, you also might be wondering, in that last game and this game, it's like, well, it looks like the other Pokemon are doing a lot of the work, a lot of the heavy lifting. Well, in this game, Starmie's putting in a lot of work, but you say, you know, a lot of other Pokemon did work in that other game, and that's another point that I'm making. You know, look how this is a team game. It's not like, yeah, I don't know. Maybe if this was 1v1 or something, but that is not the case. He even switched Starmie into Zapdos there, and it didn't die? Oh, he's trying to PP stall it or something. Anyway, I'm not here to analyze the game. And Starmie's just doing a lot. He sacrifices Starmie to T-Wave the Zapdos. And Starmie put in overtime in this game. So, yeah, that's another game. That's a win for Starmie. And so, you know, it's impressive in this game. And this all goes back to you get this kind of insight by watching the actual game. You do not get the games it's in and making your observations off a larger sample size as well, preferably. But even, you know, just one game, even one game at this level is emblematic of the metagame as a whole in most senses, because the players are bringing proven archetypes, and they're, for the most part, making, you know, really good plays. They're thinking things through, and thus you can say, oh, well, in such a matchup, you know, against these kinds of bulky teams that are, you know, really popular right now, then yes, Starmie's really good. Against offensive teams, then Spec Starmie's really good, and it threatens defense too. Wow, you know, Starmie's got some good stuff going for it, but that 50% win rate isn't going to tell you that. So here's another move. Starmie comes in, and in this one, Male makes a misplay. You could argue making a misplay by staying in and risking the confusion instead of pivoting out to something else like Zapdos. But if you are going to stay in and risk the 50%, then you got to spin because Male's got a Zapdos in the back. But that's not what happens. And this is the game with the unfortunate Guts Machamp on Male's side. And so, you know, Starmie doesn't look so good there, and it would be a lot better if he got the spin-off. Is that Starmie's fault? I don't think so. So, it's also just a testament to how strong this style is, and, you know, so, lots of, you know, I'm not saying Male's getting lucky here either, because that Machamp has crit or confused after a lot, but you could say that for a lot. So Male's trying to bring it back, and he gets the T-Wave off, and Jirachi is actually kind of bringing it back, and amazingly, Male actually puts himself in a position to win. He stalls after the, you know, misplay early on in the bad luck. He somehow almost brings it back. And, oh yeah, the Machamp was run out of dynamic punches. That's the big one. And Blissey can stall pretty much everything else once it gets in. And he just has to stall fire punches from Emerald's Jirachi, and he unfortunately does. And he still has the chance to win, but then he doesn't. So, And again, all those other factors that were not about Starmie at all influence its win rate. Now it's down to what? I think it's 1-3, if I'm counting correctly. Is that accurate of Starmie's place in the metagame? I don't think so. Small sample size, well, it's just going to be more and more of this. So, now another one. Christo versus Male. Starmie, ooh, great. It scares out Gyarados lead, and stuff happens. I wasn't a fan of that trick with Metagross on Latias. Then he switches to Starmie on Jirachi and doesn't trick or Hydro and switches out and gets a bunch of his stuff messed up and loses a Pokemon for nothing. And then Starmie tricks the Jirachi like it should have in the first place and then gets a spin-off, which for an offensive team like this, that's fine. That's really good, but he's also already lost his Metagross quite needlessly from the earlier damage and then throwing it into Jirachi like that. And you could all say, well, got the Body Slam para. What if he played it differently? It definitely could have put in more work if he had played it differently, but he didn't. And yet its win rate is going to be affected, and the win rate's not going to tell you, oh, well, if it was played differently, it would have a better win rate. No, that's why you should say, oh, well, that win rate on any Pokemon, I better, check out the games it's in. I better think about why it's happening the way it is. So then a bunch of stuff happens. Roserade, you could argue that might have been a misplay as well, letting the Roserade go. Then the Gliscor Swords dances, and then a Swampert last, and you could argue that he should have just Earthquaked because it's very likely that he just wins if he does, and then he, because going to T-Tar doesn't do anything, and if it's Cursed Swampert as it ends up being, then he loses, but, so, then the Freeze, and then, he wins. So, and thus Starmie gets a win, and you could, there's all sorts of stuff going into this. Well, the Starmie user got really lucky, so that's one thing, but, the Starmie could have done more, and maybe he could have won with Outlook if he had played differently, and the end result is just going to be, a statistic, and that's not going to tell you the whole story. So we're now at a 2-3, I think. Does that 2-3 mean anything? I mean, we're getting an increased sample size, but I don't think so. So for this one, Starmie was good on this team. I mean, Starmie really makes this team tick. Makes this team tick as well. This one's not mine, but I mean, supporting Zapdos, supporting the fighters and Blissey and Jirachi against Hazards. Yeah, Starmie's fitting well on these teams. So now you see Starmie coming into Hippo. This is actually a weakness of Starmie, being forced to recover a lot and then getting trapped by Tyranitar. And this is not real. So you could say, oh, well, Starmie's not good there. Well, first, you're going to say, let me try again. With a defensive team, then you need a better option against the Hippo than to immediately go to Starmie and start spamming spin on it. Because as a bulky Starmie user, you have to take Pursuit Tar into account somehow. So you have to, and if you do that, then you will get the most out of your Starmie. And if you are going to get Pursuited, then, make it worth it. Don't make it just a waste of a slot. You could say, oh, well, get their own hazards up. And conversely, look at how, I mean, either way, Starmie's getting a win and a loss here because it's going to cancel out. But look at how Malekith's Starmie does well against a team without a bulky team without a pursuing Tyranitar. It even does the same thing against Hippo, even though that's unreliable. But it pulls it off, and so you could say, oh, well, bulky teams, they definitely need to leverage their clef or their spikes, and they have to have some sort of plan for Starmie because look what happens when they don't. Again, you're not getting any of this from just looking at the win rate and making some sort of conclusion based on that. So, and in terms of supporting the team, definitely helpful given how hazard-prone this team is, even if you manage to Magnezone something. Obviously, Starmie is not a one Pokemon solution to hazards, as Malekith's Tyranitar has proved, allowing him to maintain a Stealth Rock. But yeah, so the last was a bulky DD Dragonite, if I remember correctly, and thus Starmie facilitated that really well. You got to get that spin-off. So as a well-built team, and I would make some changes to this one personally, but you don't just say, oh, well, look how bad Starmie was on this side and be done with it. There's so much more to glean. So, I don't even remember. Is the record 3-4 now? I think it is. All right, Toph versus Male. This time, Toph is the player with the Starmie, not Male. And Toph is going to set a record for receiving full paralysis, because now the trick, and Mail keeps trying to... he gets the trick Iron Ball off on Starmie, but even with the Iron Ball trick to it, the Starmie still puts in a lot of work. It keeps hazards off for a while, it gets the spin, you know, it puts a... I mean, I'm not saying it wasn't helped out by the full para, but look how annoying it can be to offense, even if it gets T-tarred. So, nice... Lots of info being gleaned here, more full para, and now we're at that part of the game where Starmie's dead, but the rest of the game determines its win rate, even though it already contributed to a lot, because Toph is using the same team that Mail used against Emerald. And... No, I'm sorry, he made a... it's not the same team. And Starmie definitely contributes to it, because Zapdos, etc., and the last slot is Togekiss. So yeah, you definitely need Starmie there, and it put in work in the battle. So yeah, we're getting a lot of... Yeah, Starmie is good. And if we had just stuck to that 50% win rate, we wouldn't know what we were doing. Also, you could say the Starmie team definitely should have won this game, because, you know, if Toph switched out there, he 100% won. But he didn't, and the Gengar was able to get the crit boom off, and then the game was won by Mail's fast Tyranitar that I suggested. And so yeah, that was another game. You could say, well, you know, it got a lot of hacks early, but then, you know, there was a misplay at the end, so what am I supposed to make of that? So I think Starmie is 3-5 now, if I'm kind of correct. Is that 3-5 indicative of Starmie at all? Alright, so here we have another spec Starmie against offense. Look at how much it does to Roserade. Not every Roserade is max Spadef Calm. In fact, most aren't. So, stuff happens, Starmie's going to find its way back in, and now it's going to do a lot even to Suicune, and look at how much work Starmie's putting in on a game-to-game basis. And more stuff happens, Starmie comes in again, just continuously. I mean, it's getting lucky with its Hydro Pumps. We saw, you know, in the second game how Hydro Pump can be a cruel mistress, but you know, sometimes it can be really nasty. So, there's Starmie, Hydro Pumping, you could say unlucky Thunder, but it's actually a very high roll to KO for Hydro Pump, so it's more the accuracy thing that this Starmie's got going for it. But yeah, look at how much of a monstrous threat it is. It's crazy. So a bunch of other stuff happens, but Starmie was a great Pokemon in this game, and its team got the win, and you know, you could say, oh, Mail could have played better. Sure. Does that mean that Starmie didn't deserve the win? Who's to say? If you want to refute any arguments, then, you know, please, I welcome the debate over this, but I think my overall points that are being demonstrated throughout all my yammering over all these games is, I think these points are pretty well-founded. So that's 4-5 for Starmie now? Oh, wow, that's going to tell me a lot. Here's another spec Starmie. Yeah, we really set a trend, didn't we? So look at it trashing Roserade like that again. So other stuff happens. Flygon does a lot. Flygon does more. Flygon earthquakes, kills, nice. There's a freeze on Latios. That freeze on Latios might affect Starmie's win rate. Here comes Starmie again, comes in on the Gliscor, brings Roserade down low. Oh, it didn't do so much this game. You know, maybe it could have done more if it had been played better, but what if it still wins? If the Starmie doesn't do a lot but still wins, does that mean Starmie is good? And you can see how, like, there are all these contradictions among the supposed points being proven by all these games, and that's because of all the factors that influence these games, and why win rate is such a flimsy statistic. So you could make a lot of cases about this game, but the Starmie team wins. Is that because Starmie does facilitate that team well? I don't think we've seen a single misplaced Starmie yet, so it's not like Starmie's win rate is being somehow skewed by badly built teams. So, you know, that's, what, it's 5-5 now? But should it have won more? Should it have won less? I don't know. There's so many factors going into it. And that's why putting stock in, or too much stock, or even like using this stat for more than just like passing, you know, a jump-off point, I think is the best way to illustrate what win rate should be used for. It's just foolhardy. So, Starmie's a great lead against all these bulky Azelfs, and then it misses the second Hydro Pump and dies. And you could say, oh, well, Hydro Pump. Oh, well, he could have tricked. Oh, well, still, you know, pretty good odds for Starmie to just start off the game really well. And then the Starmie team gets... Oh, was there a Fire Blast miss after? Yeah, there was a Fire Blast miss. Who knows if it was Akka or bulky enough. I'm not sure. On an agility sets, they usually die, but who knows? And then the Starmie team is going to wind up losing in a close game. Who knows how it would have gone without some of the luck? So, Starmie's, what, 5-6 now? Is that some sort of indictment? So, Malekith versus Christo, we're going to, keep going with the Starmie. It's 5... Did I say 5-6? Yeah. So now... here's a great example. Oh, I have always had it so the Starmie user is on the other side, so let me fix that. Alright, Starmie comes in, it's going to get those rocks off, and Gliscor's not going to come back in and get the rocks back up because it's at half HP and parried. So if this is a great position for Starmie, this is like ideal. If it comes in, gets the rocks off, it's very likely that Malekith will not have to deal with rocks for the rest of the game. That's a huge advantage. But it gets crit by Overheat. And Overheat can still miss one of 2 times, but it doesn't. And Starmie goes down, and instead of probably getting rocks off permanently, he does not get it off at all. And if he had sacrificed the Starmie, then he would have guaranteed it died to rocks. He would have gotten a sack out of it, at least. So, now here comes Nasty Plot Celebi, and then there's a random Heracross. I gotta say, I was not a fan of this team as a whole. So... what are we to make of this? Was this just a suboptimal team, or was it just bad luck, or all these factors going? I think it's 5-7 now. So, yeah, there's a lot of para support in the Togekiss and it's a lefties Heracross, so SD. That's interesting, but I don't think that's the best place for Starmie, but that's just my opinion, and I don't think that this game is really indicative of Starmie at all, and yet it's now 5-7, I think. Okay, so here's another game, Hyper Offense. The Azelf is going to... Oh, look at that. That's how it's done. You pivot the Zapdos in, and then Starmie comes in on the Forced Ice Punch, and then it gets a spin-off against these offense teams, because a lot of them lack Scarf Rotom, and then the rocks are off permanently, and now Zapdos is a menace, and, that's huge. So, yeah, that's another example. Look how well Starmie performs here, once again supporting the team, and, there's a Torterra. Torterra has a 100% win rate in DPPOU, this SPL, so that's pretty cool, at least. Torterra at 100 and Infernape at 0. Put a lot of stock into these things. Okay, so, we're at a couple more games, and, yeah, 3 more games. Okay, so here's another. I don't remember how this game went, so Blind Eye, that's good. Oh, it's para spam. It's the same para spam. Oh, look, and he got the rocks off, and the T-Tar is parried, and Starmie sometimes can live crunch depending on if it's bold or not. So, it's doing well. Starmie's doing well against all sorts of offense, and with the right team support, it can even do well against defense if it's a defensive set itself. So look at how it facilitates its team and how it performs in the game. I mean, that's great. That's great. Oh, it got the spin-off there. Doesn't really help Clefable much, but maybe he should have even gone to that for who knows. It gets unlucky, but then the Metagross blows it up anyway. A bunch of other stuff happens, and Deep Blue Sea wins. So does this have something to do with Starmie? I don't know. Okay, Tama versus Male. In the semifinals, here comes Starmie. Dragonite outrages. Okay, Starmie just leads off and dies, but it was a Yachi Dragonite, so even a Specs Ice Beam wasn't going to take it out. So that's just a smart Dragonite lead, and any other Dragonite lead runs in fear. And, yeah, so is that a knock against Starmie? Is Starmie's, if Starmie's team still wins, is that still going to be some sort of statement? And now a bunch of stuff happens, and this game kind of drove me nuts to see, but... yeah, then a bunch of stuff happens, and, Camrupts, and, yeah, so I think this game could have been played a lot differently by Male. Not the turn 1. I mean, like, specifically the stuff around the Gyarados. I think that was kind of wasteful. Well, what if it flinched there? Who knows? And point being that I don't think this says much about Starmie's win rate overall. And again, you might say, oh, any individual game doesn't, but not, this collection of games we're seeing should be pointing us in the direction of, oh, Starmie facilitates a lot of really important teams and is a really good performer in game, yet the win rate would not say that. So, final game, Male versus Christo again. Male's running some HO. Christos running some balance, so you need that Starmie to support the Zapdos. Gyarados doing a bunch of stuff. And, oh yeah, so now Starmie staves off the Agiligros, and he has a surprise Ice Beam for Dragonite, which Mail takes into account to set up his late-game Agiligros sweep once he gets the sand up. And here, Starmie is unable to take on a +1 Metagross in sand. I mean, even regular Metagross in sand is a tough ask for it, because the rest of the team is not really reliable against Agiligros in conjunction with the rest of these sweepers. So this, here you could say, oh, well, these kinds of balance teams can sometimes struggle with hyper offense. I don't think inherently that they are doomed to always be weak against them, but it's something to keep in mind. And, yeah, so you could make moveset tweaks to account for that, and I think it was just played well, and it's a strong team. Mail is using Excal's team. And I don't think this really makes too much of a statement about Starmie. I mean, you could definitely read something from it, like, oh, these balance teams need to watch out for hyper offense or they can get run over. But that's not an indictment of Starmie. That doesn't upend what we've seen the entire rest of the season. So after all that we've seen from Starmie, we have a win rate of 50%. Where is it? Oh, there it is. Yeah, 50%, but I don't think it's much worse than Gengar and Empoleon. I think Gengar and Napoleon are really good. That's why they're winning a lot. And if you examine their games, then you draw a similar conclusion. But you would also say, oh, well, they fit on different kinds of teams. Sometimes they fit on teams together. You could make some sort of informed statement based on having actually watched the games. And that's the final lesson I would like to impart. Thank you guys for watching. And I welcome any debate in the comments. Please let me know if you agree or disagree or all that stuff. Join my Discord, all that fun stuff in the description. And I hope this video was useful for you. I'll catch you next time.